All right, welcome in, everyone. Get ready, because today we are diving headfirst into one of the most, well, I'd say foundational arguments for the existence of God. You ready for this? We're tackling Descartes, his meditations on first philosophy to be exact, zeroing in on the third meditation. And listen to this. He doesn't kick things off with faith, not even a teeny bit of blind belief. No, sir. Descartes starts by, get this, systematically doubting everything.
Everything. Come on, like what?
I mean, everything, even stuff like math, 2 plus 2, 4, the things we think are just like rock solid, undeniable truths.
Yeah, it's a pretty radical approach, I'll give him that. But why? What's the point of all that doubt?
Well, the way Descartes sees it, he's got to find something absolutely certain, something he can build his whole philosophical system on. It's like he's clearing the ground before building a skyscraper, right? Got to make sure that foundation can handle the weight.
That's a good analogy. So, like, questioning everything you thought you knew to find that one unshakable truth.
Exactly. But how do you even start doubting something like 2 plus 2, 4? I mean, it just is true.
Right. Well, Descartes gets pretty wild here. He throws out the idea that maybe there's this, like, all-powerful deceiver, some entity messing with our perception, making even basic logic seem faulty.
Whoa. That's a little unsettling. So how does he get out of that web of doubt?
He hits on this realization that even if he is being deceived about, well, pretty much everything, there's one thing he can't doubt, and that's the act of doubting itself. The very fact that he's thinking, even if it's about being tricked, proves he, the thinker, exists. Hence the famous line, I think, therefore I am.
Okay, that's a pretty solid starting point, I gotta admit. But I'm still not seeing how he jumps from proving he exists to proving God exists. How is he gonna make that leap?
This is where his analysis of thoughts comes in. He's really interested in these things called ideas, basically, mental representations of things, and he dives deep into where they come from. He breaks them down into 3 categories. Innate, meaning they're just like hardwired into us from birth, adventitious, like stuff we get from our experiences out in the world, and invented, things our imagination cooks up.
Gotcha. So where does this idea of God fit in? Is it something we invent, something we experience, or is Descartes going for door number 3?
That's the heart of it, right? Descartes claims the idea of God, this perfect, infinite being, is just too much, too grand, too perfect for us measly, finite humans to have come up with on our own. He's arguing that it has to be innate, like it's implanted in us by God himself.
Okay. But hold on a sec. I can imagine a unicorn, a pretty detailed one too, but that doesn't mean unicorns are prancing around out there, right? So how does Descartes tell the difference between just imagining something and having this, like, innate idea of it?
This is where he introduces the concept of objective reality.
Objective reality. Sounds intense.
It's a little complex, but basically it means the more perfect something is, the more objective reality its idea has. Like your unicorn, it has some objective reality because it's based on real things, horses, horns, But God, with all those infinite perfections, that idea's got a whopping amount of objective reality.
Okay, so it's not just about imagining anything, it's about the level of perfection packed into that idea. The more perfect the idea, the more objective reality it's got. And I guess the more powerful the cause that had to create it. Am I getting that right?
You're spot on. And that leads us to another one of his big ideas, causality. Descartes is adamant that there's got to be at least as much reality in the cause as in the effect. You can't get something from nothing. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. Makes sense. So if this idea of God has all this objective reality, like way more than our little imperfect minds can handle, it couldn't have come from us, right? The cause has to be something at least as perfect, if not more perfect, than the idea itself. I think it's starting to click for me now.
That's exactly it. That's how Descartes uses this whole idea of causality to argue that the only possible cause for this big old idea of God that we've got rattling around in our heads is God.
Okay, I see where he's going with this, but I gotta play devil's advocate here for a sec. Couldn't there be other explanations? What if we're just, like, misinterpreting our own thoughts? Maybe we're making God out to be something he's not.
That's a sharp question, and honestly, it's one that Descartes totally saw coming. He goes through these potential objections really carefully, breaks them down, dissects them.
All right, well, let's dive into those objections then and see how Descartes defends his argument. This is where things get juicy.
All right, so picking up where we left off, we were wrestling with this idea that maybe, just maybe, we're the ones kind of botching things up, misinterpreting our own thoughts,
Right. Like, could we be accidentally supersizing some ordinary thought into something divine when it's not really all that?
It's a good question, and Descartes doesn't shy away from it. He actually tackles this head on.
Yeah.
Looks at this idea of God being what he calls materially false, basically, meaning we've taken real stuff like power, knowledge, things we see in the world, and just, I don't know, crank them up to infinity without them actually reflecting a real, capital G God.
Gotcha. So, like, we see a powerful king, super smart scholar, and we just, like, hit the max button on those qualities, slap on a God label, and call it a day.
Yeah, kind of like that. But Descartes says, hold up, that doesn't quite work. He points out that the whole idea of God, it includes perfections that go way beyond anything we bump into in the material world. Take infinity, for example.
Yeah.
It's not just like a bigger version of something finite,
Yeah.
It's a whole different category of being.
Okay, I'm following. So, our limited experiences can't fully explain the vastness of this whole God idea, but what about just taking finitude and, like, flipping it? Instead of limited, we think unlimited. Couldn't that create the idea of God without him actually needing to exist?
Descartes thought about that too. He says, and this is important, there's this major difference between potential being and actual being. When we flip finitude, we're only picturing the potential for something unlimited. But the idea of God, it's not about potential, it's about actual existing perfection.
I see. So, we're not just making God up based on our limited experience or playing word games with finitude, but I gotta be honest, it still feels like a bit of a leap. Even if I buy that the idea of God is innate, couldn't there be some other cause we're just totally missing? Some other explanation for how this idea got planted in us?
This is where things get really interesting. Remember, we started with Descartes proving he exists as a thinking thing, right?
Yeah.
But he's also very aware that he's a finite and imperfect being. And here's the twist. He says this very awareness of his own limitations, it actually points towards something beyond himself.
Whoa, wait, hold up. How do limitations prove anything about God? That feels backward.
It's subtle, but think of it this way. Imagine you're in a valley, surrounded by mountains. You only know those mountains are there because they're blocking your view, right?
Yeah.
Your awareness of those limits is what tells you there's something bigger out there.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see it. Our imperfections are like those edges of the valley, showing us that there's got to be a bigger reality, a perfect, unlimited God out there beyond what we can directly experience.
Exactly. Our very existence, the fact that we're finite, imperfect beings, but we still have this idea of an infinite, perfect God, it points toward a cause bigger than us. We couldn't have cooked up this idea on our own, so it has to come from somewhere else. It has to come from God.
It's like those mountains aren't just random accidents. They were created by some incredibly powerful force.
Hmm.
But, and maybe this is a question for another day, but why would a perfect God create us with, imperfections in the first place? If he's so great, shouldn't we be like flawless mini versions of him?
Oh man, that is a question that has kept philosophers busy for centuries. Centuries. Descartes actually suggests that our imperfections aren't necessarily a bad thing. They allow for growth, for learning, for developing virtues.
Mhm.
Think of an artist who leaves some rough edges on a sculpture, gives it character,
So our flaws, they're not mistakes. They're like part of the plan. Like we're a work in progress, and our imperfections are just opportunities to grow closer to God.
That's one way to look at it, yeah. Descartes argues that God's perfection, it includes giving us this gift of free will, but that means we can mess up, we can stray from the truth. But it's through those struggles, he thinks, that we actually learn and grow closer to God.
So it's not about being perfect right out of the gate. It's about that journey toward perfection. I like that. But this whole thing still hinges on accepting that the idea of God really is innate. What about people who just straight up don't believe in God? Does Descartes have anything to say to them?
That's where things get even more interesting. Descartes isn't saying everyone's walking around consciously aware of or accepting the idea of God. He believes this innate idea is there in all of us, even if it's buried under layers of other thoughts, experiences, all that stuff.
So it's like everyone could get to this understanding of God. It just might take some, I don't know, digging. What kind of digging does Descartes have in mind?
He's a big fan of introspection and good old-fashioned reasoning. Those are the tools he thinks we need to unearth this innate knowledge. He wants us to look closely at what we believe, challenge assumptions, and never stop seeking the truth.
It's like he's handed us a treasure map, but it's a map of our own minds. We got to follow the clues, use our reason, and see where it leads. But even with a map, you can take a wrong turn, right? Did Descartes think about that? Were there any pitfalls he warned us about?
Yeah, he did. Descartes wasn't naive about the challenges of using our reason. He knew we could get tripped up, make mistakes, even with the best intentions.
So, what are some of these pitfalls, these wrong turns we got to watch out for on this philosophical treasure hunt?
Well, one big one he talks about is prejudice, clinging to beliefs that we haven't really examined, just accepting things because they're familiar or comfortable. He says that stuff can really cloud our judgment, prevent us from seeing things clearly.
It's like wearing those tinted glasses that distort colors, right? You think you're seeing the world as it is, but it's all skewed.
Exactly. And another pitfall, he says, is getting too caught up in our senses. Remember that sun example we talked about earlier? Descartes is wary of relying too heavily on sensory information because our senses can deceive us. They're not always giving us the full picture.
Yeah, yeah. The sun looks small, but it's actually massive. Our senses can definitely trick us. So if we can't fully trust our senses, and we got to watch out for these sneaky prejudices, how do we actually use our reason properly? How do we avoid those wrong turns and find the truth?
Descartes lays out this whole method, kind of like a step-by-step guide for using reason effectively. He calls it, get this, the method of doubt. Sounds kind of counterintuitive, right?
Mm.
But the idea is to systematically doubt everything until you reach something you absolutely cannot doubt.
Like, question everything just to find that one solid, unshakable truth. Isn't that what we talked about at the very beginning? Like how he started this whole thing?
You got it. It all circles back.
Yeah.
He's showing us that the very process we use to prove God's existence, that's the same process we can use to uncover truth in other areas of life. It's all about using reason carefully, methodically, and not being afraid to question even the things that seem obvious.
It's like he's giving us a superpower, this ability to think critically and find our way to truth. But like any superpower, it takes practice, right? We got to train ourselves to use it effectively.
Couldn't have said to that myself. Descartes believed everyone has this capacity for reason, this spark of the divine within us. But it's up to us to nurture it, to develop it, to use it to its full potential.
So we've come a long way on this journey, from doubting everything to finding certainty in God to using that certainty to explore the world and ourselves. It's been, well, a mind-bending experience.
I agree. And I think it highlights how powerful and important philosophy is. It challenges us to think deeply, to question our assumptions, and to ultimately search for truth in a way that can really transform our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Absolutely. It's not just about memorizing facts or theories. It's about engaging with these big questions, these fundamental mysteries, and letting them shape how we see the world. And, even if we don't end up agreeing with every single one of Descartes' conclusions, the journey itself, that process of questioning and exploring, I think that's invaluable.
I couldn't agree more. Is the journey that matters, the willingness to grapple with these big ideas and let them challenge and inspire us.
Well said. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Descartes' third meditation. We hope it sparked your own philosophical curiosity and inspired you to keep questioning, keep searching, and keep exploring the big questions that shape our understanding of the world. Until next time, keep those minds sharp.